Hello and welcome to another one of these EDD 112 MATLAB videos. This one is a overview of a number of basic concepts that we've covered throughout the semester. It's going to involve some user inputs, some matrices, if statements, loops, and how to display stuff. What I've come up with is a random little example. Basically, what we have is we've got a fruit stand, and the fruit stand only sells three things. It sells pears for 90 cents each, apples for $1 each, and dragon fruits, which is apparently the plural of dragon fruit, for $7.50 each. What this stand does is at the end of every month, it creates a text file with a summary of all of the orders. In this, it's got 5 columns. The first one is the day of the month. The second one is the number of pears in the order. Third is apples. Fourth is dragon fruits. And the fifth is a customer number that's been assigned for each customer so that you can track individual how much they bought. The code that we're going to go through and the goals of this code is we want to be able to load in this data from the text file. We then want to be able to pull up a summary of sales for the month. So this is going to be how much money we brought in that month and then how much of each fruit we've sold. We also want to be able to pull up individual customer summaries based on our input. So let's say we had customer number 4. We'd want to be able to hit 4 and see exactly what that customer bought. So let's go to this code. As with previous examples, we've got our heading at the top, and then we've got our CLC, clear, and close all. CLC, remember, clears the command window here at the bottom. Clear gets rid of any previously saved variables, and then close all gets rid of any old windows that are open. So we're going to start, and we want to load in our text file. And so we make sure that our text file is in our current folder. In this case, I named it Fruit Stand Orders. And then we load it in through, we're using the read matrix command this time. Our file name is here, and we're saving it to a matrix called orders. If I run this, it will load that in. And we now have a 73 by 5 double matrix that if I open, it sees, okay, we've got all of our days of the month. We've got our pears, apples, dragon fruits, and our customer numbers. So that's done. Now we want to take and figure out, well, how long was this? We can see from the left-hand side that it's 73 by 5. But we want to be able to do that automatically because let's say one month we sell more than 75 or we sell less. We want to have the code actually adjust for that. To do that, we're going to use the size command. The size command is a function that takes the size of a matrix. And in this case, we take the first dimension of that matrix. So that's going to be the number of rows. Remember, it goes rows, then columns. So 1 is rows, 2 would be columns. So finding out the number of rows and saving that to order numbers, or num orders. So if I run this, we now have that we had 73, a matrix of 73, and now our num orders is 73 as well. We also want to create a matrix here, just a little list, which has values for each one. So our days are not going to have a cost value associated with it. Our second column is our pears. They are 90 cents each. Our third column is our apples. They are $1 each. Fourth column was our dragon fruits, and they are $7.50 each. And then the fifth column was the customer number. So that gets a 0. And now we've got the basics set up. So we want to be able to figure out our user entry. We want to be able to say, I need information about customer so-and-so. In this case, we're going to save this as customer. Oops, sorry. And we're using an input statement. Now, this in here is just the prompt that it will output. And I'm just going to run this, and it will have in our command, what customer number are we looking for? And now I could enter anything I want. Say I entered 54. That is now saved as our customer. So with this, we can now start looking at our if statements. So since we want to have different things happen based on this number, we create an if statement, and in this case we have an if, an else, and an end. And what we're going to do is, if the customer is 0, so if I enter 0 for this user input instead of 54, then I want my summary of the month for everything. Otherwise, I want to be able to look at each individual customer's purchases. So in this case, if I have that be 0, then I'm going to take a look and say, just output the data. So if I have displayed this month's total income is, and this is just a single display statement with a single argument. So we only have the quotes here. And then the next line here is a list of outputs. So we have the $sign, then a number. So we're going to print a number here. And it's going to be a floating point decimal, which means it's, and with 2 decimal places. So we're looking at money, and we're summing up values. So what this is doing is it's taking the matrix called orders. It's taking our cost matrix. It's multiplying those two. Now we're doing this dot operator here. So dot multiplication, that's going to take this first number and multiply it by the first column. Then it's going to have the second number here and multiply that by the second column. Third number by a third column, fourth number by fourth column, and so on and so forth. So what it's then going to do is it's going to sum all of those up, and then it's going to sum horizontally. So this sum is going to sum each column, and then this sum is going to sum each row. So if I run this now, and we say we want 0 because we're looking at this first one. So we say 0. Our total income for this month was $2,032. Great. Let's take a look at how many of each item we sold as well. So I'm going to put that in here. So we now have that, missed a letter. So now we have that we can look at and say this month's total number for each item sold. And again, this is just a straight display statement, nothing special about it. And then this one has the brackets again because we are stringing together separate things. So we're going to say pairs, and we're going to again use that sprintf command. This time, instead of looking at a floating point, a decimal number with 2, we're looking at an integer because, I mean, the pairs are always going to be whole numbers. So we're just going to output an integer. And now it's going to sum the orders, all rows in the second column. So the colon operator in this case, if you're looking at a matrix and you put a colon in the location spot, you're saying every single row for column 2. If we had, for instance, 2 comma colon here, that would say all columns in the second row. But we want all rows in the second column. And same with apples, are all rows in the third column and all rows in the fourth column for the dragon fruits. Need to pluralize that. So I run this, and we now can say, all right, we're looking at customer 0, and we have that the total for the month was 2,000, and then for each item we sold 400 something pears, 400 apples, and 155 dragon fruits. So that gives us our summary information, which means we're done with this first section of the if statement. If we're not looking at customer 0, that means we're looking at customers that we actually have numbers for. So whatever number we enter, if it was 5, customer 5, we want to summarize everything that customer bought in the month. Okay, so in this next part, because we want to look at each individual customer number, let's start by listing that number. To do that, we do the exact same thing as we did before, and we just have a display statement. In this case, it's a list denoted by these two brackets that says the order summary for customer number, and then it prints up that customer integer. Okay, so if we're looking for customer 4, then it's going to say the order summary for customer number 4. Great. We now want to do some quick little initializations. One is we're going to say customer order number, and that's going to start with 0. And then the next one is we're going to have a variable for the total, and that's going to start with 0 as well. So at this point, because we want to look through our entire 73 row matrix for orders that customer whatever placed, we need to use a for loop. So we're going to say for number of orders, we're going to go from I going from 1 to num orders. And remember, num orders is the size of our matrix. So that's going to be our number of rows that we have. And this going from 1 to num orders allows us to look at each row in that matrix. So we're going to test each row of the matrix. And we're going to look especially at the 5th column of every row, because that is where we stored our customer information. And so this is saying, all right, in the orders matrix at the ith row, so that goes through everyone, 5th column, if that's equal to our customer number that we're looking for, then we want to do stuff. In there, the very first thing is, if we encountered that customer number, we can say, okay, our customer order number is equal to the previous one plus 1. And this means that the very first time we encounter a customer order with our certain number, it goes from 0 and then it adds 1 and becomes 1. And then the next time it encounters that customer number, it becomes 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So we take that and we output just that information, order number so and so for that customer. We do a quick calculation saying for that row, so whatever the ith row was, the entire row, we're going to multiply that by our cost matrix to get our values that we want. We then have to output those values. And this becomes the same thing as we did before, but just with some new stuff. So we have that we're displaying a list of values. We start with an integer, and this integer is going to be our orders matrix, the ith row, and the second element, which is the number of pairs that we had. And then we also say how much that costs, so we put a $sign there, and we look into our subtotal. So that's this value that we just calculated. We look at the second column, first row of that, and that gives us our monetary value of however many pairs we had. Same with apples, dragon fruit, so on and so forth. Now, again, this part was an integer because you are only going to have whole pears, whole apples, and whole dragon fruit. And this one is a floating point with 2 decimal places because it's money. So if I run this now and I say, all right, if we're looking for customer number 4, it's going to print up that information for customer number 4, where we had 8 pairs times 90 cents each, $7.20, 5 apples at $1 each is $5, and 0 dragon fruit for a total of $12.20 for order number 1. And then it encountered a second order where this customer bought 12 pears, and then 12 pears and 8 apples, and then so on and so forth. And so this is all the orders that customer number 4 placed this month. In the end, we right now only have individual subtotals. So we want to also output the total number spent by that customer. And so we're going to say our total that started at 0 up here, each time it gets to an order, it adds that subtotal to it, and it just adds that to the total so that we end up keeping a running tally of everything that customer owed us in the month. Now, what we need to do is we need to output that amount, but let's say we didn't have an order from a certain customer. We had customer number 72. They didn't order anything that month. They're not going to have a subtotal. They're not going to have any of these lists. So we have to output that as a separate statement. So the first thing we do is we say an if statement. If a customer ordered something, then our customer order number is not going to be 0. And that's what this line here does. This squiggle equal sign is not equal. So that means that customer order number is not equal to 0, which there was an order that that customer made. Then we can output our total, and that's done as above. So we have, for the above orders, this month's total comes out to be, and we have our print, and we print up our total there. If this customer didn't order anything, then this is going to be 0. So we'd have an else here. If it's not 0, it does this. If it is 0, it needs to do an else. And we can just output a simple little statement saying this customer didn't order anything, and this will output everything. So if I run this again, we can look and say, all right, if we're looking at customer number 5, customer number 5 ordered 5 times this month, although he had an order with nothing in it. So he created an order, but then didn't decide to buy anything. It's still tracked in our process. In total, he owes $166, and we can figure that out. Now, if I was to do this for a customer that didn't exist, let's say customer number 56, they didn't order anything this month, so there's no data for them, and they don't owe us anything. And lastly, as before, if we say 0, we get our total for the month. And that's a quick little example, well, not so quick, it ended up going a little bit longer than planned, of some aspects of this code. Thank you, and have a good week.